He aimed the barrel of his Glock at my head. Max, my pit bull, was growling, his teeth bared, just inches from the guy's throat. My finger hovered over the trigger of my Desert Eagle. 5 seconds. That was all I gave them a leave. But they didn't move. And that's when everything spiraled into chaos. But let me take you back to the beginning. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon. One of those dry, blistering days in southern Arizona where the heat clings to your skin and makes the air feel like hot syrup. I was sitting on my porch, nursing a cold beer, watching the dust swirl lazily across the driveway. Max lay sprawled out at my feet, his powerful chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. His ears twitched at the distant crunch of gravel. I set the bottle down on the wooden railing and squinted against the glare of the sun. A black SUV was rolling up the drive. Dust curled up behind its tires, spiraling in the air. The engine cut off with a low grumble, and 2 men stepped out of the vehicle. They wore matching navy blue uniforms. On their sleeves were white patches that read HOA Enforcement Division. The taller one was lean, moving with the confidence of someone used to telling people what to do. There was a stiffness in his posture, something you only see in men trained to act without hesitation. His partner was shorter, built like a fire hydrant. Thick neck, broad shoulders, cold gray eyes. He scanned my property with a precision that didn't sit right with me. Something was off. Nobody from an HOA shows up like that. "Excuse me, sir," the tall one barked as he strode toward my porch like he owned it. "We're here on behalf of the Homeowners Association. There have been complaints about unregistered animals on your property." I didn't move. Didn't even breathe. "I don't belong to an HOA," I said flatly. The tall guy smiled, thin and sharp. He pulled out a clipboard, flicking at its corner with his thumb as he stepped closer. "According to our records," he said, "you're in violation of several neighborhood regulations. We'll need to confiscate your dog and issue a fine." My blood went cold. Max's head lifted slowly. His amber eyes sharpened as he picked up on the tension bleeding into the air. I stood up. The weight of the Desert Eagle on my hip was reassuring. "This is private property," I said. "Get off my land." The shorter guy's jaw clenched. His hand drifted toward his belt, toward something strapped to his hip. "Sir, you're resisting an official HOA inspection," he said, his voice hard. "If you don't comply, we'll have to take further action." Max stood too. His muscles rippled under his brindle coat as a low growl rumbled from his chest. His ears pinned back. His lips curled, exposing teeth white as bone. My fingers brushed the grip of my pistol. "Try it," I said. The tall guy took another step forward. His chest puffed out like he was testing the space between us. His gaze flicked down on my hand. "Is that a threat?" he asked. I smiled, but there wasn't any warmth in it. "No," I said. My Desert Eagle was already half drawn. "It's a promise." The tension was electric. Max's growl deepened, vibrating through the thick, dry air. The taller guy's eyes narrowed. Calculating. The shorter guy shifted, ready to pounce. I thumbed off the safety on my pistol. The moment balanced on a razor's edge. One wrong move, and it was going to get bloody. The tall guy's smile twisted into something smug. "Fine," he said, his voice low and sharp. "We'll do this the hard way." His hand drifted toward his belt. Too smooth. Too confident. And that's when I saw the handcuffs. A knot formed in my gut. These guys weren't HOA. Hell, I wasn't even sure they were real cops. It was the way they moved. Predators. They weren't here to hand out fines. They were here for something else. I moved fast. My hand shot to my hip, ripping the Desert Eagle from its holster. Max launched off the porch in a blur of brindle muscle and snapping jaws. "Back off!" I roared. I aimed for the ground between them and squeezed the trigger. The blast tore through the quiet, dirt spraying up in a violent cloud between their boots. The tall guy flinched, stumbling back. His hand twitched toward his sidearm, but Max was already in motion. He hit the short guy hard, taking him down in a crash of limbs and gravel. The man screamed, arms flailing, as Max's teeth snapped inches from his throat. "Control that dog," the tall one yelled, panic cracking through his composure. I cocked the hammer back on the Desert Eagle. The sound was sharp and metallic. "You're not in control here," I said, ice cold. Max had the short guy pinned. His jaws flashed dangerously close to his jugular. Spit dripped from his teeth as he growled low and deep. The man's eyes were wide, his breath ragged. He tried to push Max off, but it was no use. Max was a tank. The taller man's eyes hardened. He yanked his own weapon free and leveled it at Max. "Let him go," he shouted. I raised the Desert Eagle and aimed it square at his head. "Or what?" I said quietly. My pulse thundered in my ears, but my hand was steady as a rock. The tall guy's nostrils flared. His gun was up, but his eyes told the real story. Doubt. Max growled louder. His jaws snapped shut with a sharp click. The man's trigger finger twitched, but he hesitated. Sweat gleamed on his forehead under the punishing Arizona sun. "You won't shoot," he sneered, trying to sound confident. But there was a tremor in his voice. "Try me," I said. Max's growl rumbled like distant thunder. His muscles were coiled, ready to lunge. The short guy was turning red beneath him, struggling for air, clawing at the dirt. "You have 5 seconds," I said, my voice flat, "to leave my property." The tall man's eyes widened slightly. "You're making a mistake," he said quickly. 4. We're authorized. 3. Listen. 2. His finger twitched. I saw the calculation in his eyes. He was testing me. 1. I fired. The shot cracked through the air, the bullet slamming into the dirt an inch from his boot. He stumbled back, panic stripping away his composure. Max barked, vicious and primal. The shorter man screamed under him. "Get him off me," he shouted. The tall guy lunged forward, grabbing his partner's arm and yanking him up. Max's teeth snapped close to his ear before I whistled sharply. "Max, back!" Max snarled but obeyed, trotting back to my side. His muscles were still tense, his eyes never leaving the two men. "This isn't over," the tall guy spat. "Sure feels like it," I said, stepping forward, the Desert Eagle still raised. "Now get the hell off my land." They scrambled for the SUV. The shorter man practically fell into the passenger seat. The taller one slammed behind the wheel and gunned it. The tires spun, throwing up gravel and dust as they peeled away. I stood there, guns still up, until they were long gone over the ridge. Max sat beside me, panting but alert. I let out a slow breath. The silence returned. Oppressive, heavy, but I knew it wouldn't last. They'd be back, and next time I wouldn't miss. I knelt beside Max, running my fingers through his fur. "Good boy," I said. His tail wagged once. I was about to head back inside when something glinted in the dirt. I picked it up. A badge. Plastic. Cheap. Fake. There was a phone number on the back. I dialed. HOA Enforcement Division. A robotic voice answered. I smirked. "Yeah," I said. "I'd like to report a couple of imposters. And if they showed up again?" I loaded another round into the Desert Eagle. Next time, they weren't leaving in one piece.